Good morning, good evening, Warren. So good to see you again.
It's always a pleasure to see you. I just so have enjoyed our discussions together, Pierre.
it's been, I think, since December we didn't meet.
Exactly.
When you came join us at the Pontifical Academy of Science
hmm
for our discussions about how to make our civilization great again,
hmm
how to contribute to integral human development, how to empower
hmm
people. Uh, and in this context, the whole team, the foundation, the people with whom we work in Vatican are extremely grateful that you came, you participated, and while we were having a breakfast together, discussing your wonderful contributions, it came across during our conversation that. Uh, your findings can be of great help to bring peace not only in couples, not only in families, but also for collectivities. And so came this idea to have a podcast together and have a discussion how your systems, how your findings can be integrated uh,
hmm
into larger concepts for collectivities. And so today, I have the great chance to welcome Warren Farrell on our podcast. It's the second one. You're following Joe Dispenza, and there will be a lot and many other people who will join further. But we thought that this concept of forgiveness was essential to go further while we're building a bit of content here. And so, Warren, thank you again.
Absolutely.
And please explain us, or if you could make a sum up of this conversation we had and your key concepts about
Mhm.
forgiveness, on how to reinvent the story, how to rediscover new purpose.
Yes, my work in this area started about 30 years ago. I had been working on male-female issues for many years and was seeing that a lot of couples were being told in couples work that was being done around the world that it was very important to not be defensive in response to criticism. And so every couple was, nodding in agreement that was a good idea and they shouldn't do that. But then when the couples got home, what they found is that the moment criticism from their partner appeared, that wisdom of not being defensive disappeared. And so it was like, and so I started asking, well, why is it so tough to just be able to hear your partner? And I realized that historically and biologically, when we heard a criticism, it was a potential enemy. And so, in order to survive, it was biologically natural to get up our defenses so we wouldn't be killed by the enemy, or alternatively, just kill the enemy before the enemy killed you. And so, and that was functional for survival, but it's absolutely dysfunctional for love. And it's dysfunctional for being able to resolve conflicts. And so I started asking myself, well, what needs to happen before somebody can really feel open to not being defensive, but really being receptive? And since it isn't biologically natural, I realized that the starting block was to alter your mindsets. That is from the natural defensive mindset to a mindset that was more receptive to hearing what your partner wanted to say to you without becoming defensive, without having your partner have to walk on eggshells.
So our listener understand correctly what you're saying here. What you're saying is that often in interpersonal relationship or fear system or biological fear system kicks in at the wrong place.
At the wrong place, meaning
At the wrong place, we are responding with as if it was a natural disaster arriving, when
Mhm.
in fact what should kick in is our ability, built-in capacity to love, correct?
The capacity to love would be absolutely ideal. And so, then what leads a person to feeling understood, heard, and loved. It was the next big challenge. And so because it's so natural to respond defensively, I realized I had to set aside one time a week for couples to be able to just be able to one person to share one concern that they had, that they wanted to be able to have that concern heard by their partner. Now, all this that I'm explaining, eventually, once a couple learns to do this, I'll sort of talk with you about how then to do this with a member of your family that has politically opposite views that you'd like to love, and therefore with another nation that you'd like to be able to get along with, but for sure they're wrong and you're right, and therefore you want them to hear you, but they don't want to. You don't necessarily want to hear them, and so the bigger issue here that I'll get to, is not forgiveness, because forgiveness implies that I am right and you are wrong, and I will forgive you for the wrong you have done. The big issue is having the person that you're dealing with or the nation that you are dealing with feel heard in a way that lets them know that their version of history, that their version of conflicts, that their version of the world, their fears, their desires have at least been heard. That doesn't mean that you agree with them. It only means that you leave them with them feeling that the way they look at the world at least was heard by you and not argued with immediately. And then, of course, the process reverses. So the people that have just been heard also learn how to hear a very different perspective off, and then how to resolve the fact that those two perspectives will not necessarily match. In fact, they're almost always will not match, and how to let them coexist with each other without using them to destroy the other person. And so that's the bigger picture as to the process. I'll share with you a bit about how I do this with a couple, and then train that couple to do it with their family, and how then that can be applied to nations that hate each other or that are at war with each other. And the bigger picture here with nations that are at war with each other is that everyone needs to be appreciated. And so part of the process is that before you share your perspective with another nation, like if it's Ukraine and Russia.
Or others, because for that sake, it's always the same mechanism, right? The mechanism of hatred,
Mhm.
where people find certainty in the hatred of the other, or
Mhm.
being the victim of the other, right?
Ex-
In the case of Russia and Ukraine, Russia says it's your fault, you provoked us, so this is a victim mentality. In the case of Ukraine, they've been invaded, and now they have this hatred because they are certain that the Russians are
Mhm.
bad, right? And
Mhm.
this focus on what there is not, we see that in neuroscience, but I think we can apply it as well to collectivities. When we
Mhm.
focus on what there is not, the brain does not work correctly, because the brain is made for what there is and looking at what there is, right? And there is one thing that is indeed being heard that re-establish probably the potential for a dialogue. But this loop can be endless. We can hear in a couple or in a business meeting or between nations forever. You are the bad one and the good one. Okay, I understand you, but in fact,
Yes.
I believe that you are the bad one and the good one.
Yes.
And then people can understand each other this way for a very long time, right? And
Absolutely.
what's the place of redefining a new purpose, a common purpose, and restarting looking at what there is in each other, in the diversity as well,
Mhm.
and how this diversity can contribute to a project that would be common.
Yes.
Do you see that as well in couples, in the way people interact with each other?
Absolutely. The first thing that I train and work with couples to do is to sort of fill the reservoir of love by learning how to appreciate their partner. So oftentimes they're really, and ready to, sort of criticize their partner and tear them apart and show them why they're right and they're wrong. But before you can even begin to move into this process, it becomes the training of what each one has to appreciate about the other one. And then most people say, well, I appreciate all you do, or yes, I appreciate your tough history if it's a nation. But the job of appreciating what I work with couples and therefore would potentially work with nations to do is to be very specific in that appreciation. What is there in Russia's history that you, as a Ukrainian, can appreciate? What is there in Ukraine's history that you, as can appreciate? And so that the immediate first response is, wow, this other nation sees the good in me. And once the good in you is seen, you start relaxing. And you're no longer feeling the threat of being bombed by somebody that sees the good in you. Or at least you can see the possibility of an alternative to being bombed when somebody is seeing the good in you. So being appreciated by your potential enemy, and having that appreciation be very specific is step number one. Um, Another step is to see what you both have in common. And oftentimes, whether it's a couple or whether it's a family member, what you both have in common is like, if you disagree politically, let's say, and it's a family member that is in the United States. One is a Democrat, one is a liberal, one is a Trump supporter, one is a Trump hater. Is to see, what is the virtue that led that person to support President Trump or a nationalist type of candidate, and what is the virtue in the person who is seeing the world from a different perspective. And so so almost every virtue taken to its extreme becomes a vice. And so, for example, in the United States, there may be somebody who's a very strong feminist and somebody who feels that feminism always accuses men of being part of the patriarchy and is very negative. And so the person who feels that feminism is always accusing men of being part of the patriarchy might find the virtue in feminism and say, okay, I see that my daughter has opportunities now that our grandmother never had. And so, all right, I see that virtue in that. And the other one might say, oh, I can see the virtue in rather than preventing people from speaking at universities because they're conservative, that it might be good for a university to have many points of view rather than just one point of view. And so I can see the value in that. Yes, go ahead.
Well, what you say is extremely important. It's Thomas Aquinas who was saying that, as surprising as it could be, human will can orient itself only towards what it identifies as a good. It's an impressive statement because, in fact, when you look at it, it's true in all cases. Take the worst drug trafficker, right?
Mhm.
He will do a horrible traffic for something that he identifies as a good. Could be money,
Yes.
could be power,
Mhm.
that at the end are indeed good things. The way he reaches this thing are wrong, and the way he uses it is also wrong morally. But at the bottom of all of that, human will can orient itself only towards what it identifies as a good. And so this appreciation you talk about is indeed essential to reconnect as fundamental human beings, right? So the
Yeah,
first part
absolutely.
is hearing, second part is appreciation of the other, right? And if I
Yes, appreciating the other one for that which you can appreciate, and then even appreciate. So they're appreciating it when it comes to nations. You can choose appreciation from anything in their history, their culture, the way that they've set up their museums, the way they've set up their highways, their efficiency, their effectiveness, their planning ahead, their economy. Just pulling out of all the options, what you appreciate about them, and then being very specific about. I really appreciate the fact that that you broke up the country in order to be able to have other countries exist independently. And so, whatever you can figure out to appreciate. And then the second level is finding the virtue in the specific things that you disagree about, and seeing
What there
what
is.
that virtue was
Yeah.
before it took the train from virtue land to vice land.
Yeah.
And then so rather than focusing, almost always our tendency is to sort of start right in focusing on what we disagree with, as opposed to seeing the portion of what the other person believes that we can agree with, like with the illustration I gave about feminism versus DEI, and feminism having gone too far in an anti-male direction, let's say. And then just instead of focusing on feminism going too far in the anti-male direction, you focus on feminism creating opportunities for women, for your daughter, for your wife, that you had never thought of before. And so, and then what I find, once each person feels that the good and the other person is heard, then their whole propensity, their biological propensity to be self-listening, that is, listening to their self respond while the other person is talking, and come up with an idea that you will defeat the other person with, which is the natural way to listen
Looking
when
for
you're with an
certainty,
enemy,
right?
is that settles down and disappears. Then the next process is hearing the other parties, the other nations, the other person in your family's point of view, in a way that is not focused on defensiveness and is not focused on self-listening. So, and that requires a series of mindsets that I have people go through before they listen to somebody that they disagree with. So, with couples, for example, I start out with what I call the love guarantee. And the love guarantee is that before the person is experiencing a criticism by their partner, they settle themselves and meditate into 6 different meditations. One of those meditations is saying, if I provide a safe environment for you to say whatever you want to say in whatever tone of voice you wish to say it, whether I completely disagree or completely agree, I will provide that environment of safety for you to do that. So you don't have to walk on eggshells worrying about what everything you say, whether I'm going to criticize it or not. And I know that when I do that, that you'll feel more secure with me, and therefore you'll feel more loved by me.
So
And you won't
it's
feel,
reaching out, giving guarantees that you presume the good intention.
I presume the good intention, and I'm not going to be, while they're talking, I'm not going to be listening to myself figure out a response. And I call that process figuring out a response while the other person is talking. I call that not listening, but self-listening, listening to your own response. And then I have them, the moment they do find themselves to do what is natural, which is to self-listen, they say to their partner, hold. And the word hold means, let me recenter myself so that I can remember that I need to provide a safe environment for you. When I have recentered myself, I'll say, please go ahead. And the word hold is my way of treating what you are saying as being sacred, and wanting to provide that safe environment for you.
So basically,
And
there you reach to the part of contribution. So you lead people to start contributing by giving this safe environment, and you follow what it's basically a saying of a saint of the Catholic Church, Saint Josemaria, who said, "Always presume the good intention, because
yes.
you will be 100% right."
Mhm.
Which is precisely this bridge not looking for certainty from the other, but giving certainty from yourself to the other.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Very well stated and very, very good.
And
Um,
there is always the mistake, I believe, both at individual level, at collective level, is to demand from the other certainties, guarantees that anyway don't exist. Who knows the future, right? And
yes.
so the only certainty we have is for those who believe in God, in God Himself, and if not, or if not, in the talent we can give, what we can contribute, or what we wish to contribute, right?
Mhm.
And so in your methods, you basically invite people to start contributing safety.
Yes, absolutely. And so you are letting that person, like the example you gave before of the drug dealer. If you're talking to a drug dealer, she or he will say, usually he will say some version of, I wanted to support my family. And then you say in your mind's eye, well, that's a terrible way to support your family. And the drug dealer will say, that's very fine for you to say from a middle class home with lots of education. You had plenty of ways to support your family. I didn't have those advantages of the ways to support the family. Now, you may have an argument in your mind about, well, you could have done it this way, you could have done it that way. But your job at that moment is to just hear that drug dealer's way of looking at himself as a person who saw these ways as the best ways to do something that was positive from his or her perspective. And that doesn't mean that you're going to agree with that or suggest that method to anybody else. It only means that you give space to that person's way of looking at the world. And then when that process is finished, that other person, that other nation gives that same space to you for your way of looking at the world. And then the next step is that you will usually see two ways of looking at the world that are sort of sometimes incompatible, or sometimes neither one of you feels that the other way of looking at the world is accurate, but you both have just experienced being heard and the virtues of the way that you look at that world, the best intent, the desire to support your family by dealing with drugs, the desire to have more diversity of opinion rather than diversity being forced down your throat. Or the virtue is found in, I find that once somebody sees that a person that they normally cast as their as their enemy, can both see the virtue in what they're doing, provide a safe environment, and recognize that the two different views of the world can coexist almost always at the same time, as long as both people feel that the best part of what they intended to do was heard. Once you get to that place with the other person, your energy for doing something together that leads to a greater amount of peace that is much greater because you don't see you don't see that person as a walking version of somebody who wants to destroy you.
Yeah, and then probably comes the question when you reach a safe environment where certainty is more present, certainty in the other, recognition of what there is, you reach an environment where you can ask yourself another question, which is, what may I contribute to the other? What may I contribute to the situation? And once people reckon what they can contribute, is so
Mhm.
there is the appreciation of the other, and now starts the appreciation of oneself, not
Yes,
in imposing yourself, but what may I contribute? And from there, you can also contribute your dreams, right? And there starts probably, once that is well done, starts probably as well the foundational moment of rebuilding a new common purpose.
absolutely. Very well said, very well restated, very well listened to.
And so, how do couples heal in that system? How do they, from different vision of the world, how do they find an intersection in such a way to resume building things together again?
Yes, first of all, when the couples do that. Almost never has a couple felt really heard about the issues that bother them most. And sometimes people start and they say to me, Dr. Farrell, I'm sort of a little hesitant to do this because this thing that it really bothers me the most, I've mentioned this 100 times before. So, why should I mention it again? And I say, well, usually you've mentioned it 100 times because each time you have mentioned it, you have not felt heard. And once you feel completely heard in a way that you want to feel heard, then you will find that the energy of having to get your partner to hear that will have softened. And you will therefore also be open to hearing your partner's version of that story. And so, and with couples, one of the things I do is I have the couple sit back to back, and they both are going to write on a piece of paper that is identical to the other person's piece of paper the answer to the following question. If your partner is about to be killed, imagine your partner is about to be killed, let's say drown or be killed in a car accident, and you know with 100% certainty that you can intervene in such a way that you will save their life. However, in the process, you have a 50% certainty that you will lose your life in the process. Will you be willing to do it or not do it, or you're uncertain? So they write down on that piece of paper, a piece of paper that I promise their partner will never see the answer to, whether they were certain that they will be willing to take a 50% risk of dying, uncertain, or or um, or no, they aren't. And so I find that about
Sometimes the situation is so bad that you might have the answer, of course, I'm not doing anything.
yeah, yes, exactly. The only caveat is I say make believe children are not involved in the equation. Make believe it's just you and your partner. And so I then ask, then I have all the people wrinkle this piece of paper into a tight ball. All the guys throw it in one place and all the women throw it in another place. And then the guys pick up the ball and they look at it and they read about whether the guys the other some other guy was willing to be 100% yes, they would be willing to die. No, they wouldn't, or they're uncertain. About 90% of the guys say that they would be willing to do this. That is, risk their life at a 50% level in order to save their partner's life. About 80% of the women say they'd be willing to do this. And so then the first meditation I have the couple do is, well, if I'm willing to die for you, maybe I can listen to you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it puts listening to the other person in perspective, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
and so
it's,
in a war situation, some version of that would be if, well, here you are willing to have the people in your country willing to die, or maybe it might be a little bit easier to have the people in your country to listen and hear what the other country feels and honor them for the best parts of them rather than the parts they disagree with you about.
what you do in this experiment with the back-to-back situation you just explained is effectively you are reformulating a common purpose, saving the life of the other, right? And
Yes.
it embarks them in an extreme adventure, yet a common purpose, which is
Mhm.
let's save the life of the other, right?
Mhm.
And they join an activity where one is drawing and the other one is saving the life of the other, which
Mhm.
indicates the direction. And what we see is you can see that at individual level or couple level or family level, collective business
Yeah.
level, right? Is you need a common purpose. That's what
Yeah.
unites people because human brain is a teleological mechanism. It is a mechanism oriented towards an end, like a missile, a cyber mechanism, if you wish.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
if the brain does not have, in the relationship with the other or the others, a common target, it creates interferences, right? And
Mhm.
and that common target must be a purpose defined together. And
Yeah.
so what we see is that be it at couple level that will not have like regular, explicit, conscious targets, goes in free-wheel mode, and at some point are on a collision course, right? Because
Yes.
the targets are aligned. Does it mean that all targets in life must be absolutely aligned? But at least for the couple, they should have a set of common targets that defines their purpose. Why is that they are having this couple? What do they want to produce with that couple? How do they want to live with each other? Whom do they want to give to each other? No?
Yes.
What do they
Absolutely.
want their couple to produce to their children, to their friends, to their community?
Mhm.
And this applies to any type of relationship, even the relationship to oneself. And so in situations of war, as long as you don't have redefined a common purpose, the war will go on. You can make a pause, but that pause purpose will be to weapon again, to restart after, right?
Yes.
Uh, and so a renewed sense of purpose, a realignment towards making something good together that will profit not only to the two persons but also to the others, right? Because we are meant to contribute, we are meant to love, and love is not only the beautiful feeling people have when they love each other. This is a byproduct of love. Love, in the sense of charity, caritas, is the act of giving oneself without expecting anything in return, as John Paul II defined it. And it's possible in any circumstance. And indeed, it starts, as you say, with listening, appreciating, seeing what there is, and then having the prudence to ask oneself the question: whom do I want to give here? What do I want to give? Right?
Mhm.
And as part of that contribution, you can propose new common targets. Maybe your new common targets will not be the end targets, but that contributes to the debate. And together you can reformulate maybe targets that will be totally different than the one you expected at the beginning. But when you do what you just explained here, listen, appreciate, give a safe space, you open to a world of creation, of contribution.
Mhm.
It's the work of doing
Absolutely.
would be
And
wonderful.
you honor, so let's say it's two nations. And what do you have in common? You both have in common your desire to not have the next generation of men be destroyed. And why do you care about that? Not only for the men, but if the next generation of men is destroyed, the next generation of women has very few people to choose from to marry, and so we always have a stronger protector instinct toward women. So if we look at how it hurts women to have men destroyed, we're even more likely to find a common purpose. And for two people that are on opposite ends, two leaders that are opposite ends, acknowledging that you know that that leader wants the people in their nation to have the very best life as possible, and that life is usually not that ideal if they're dead, or if their father is dead, or their son is dead, or their brother is dead, or their and so everybody suffers when a person dies, not just the person that dies. And so when you acknowledge that desire in the other person, the other leader, you give somebody that you give that person the credit of them seeing that they are being honored for what is good and what they care about, and that again lightens the feeling of what I am dealing with here is an enemy who doesn't trust me.
Yeah, that's probably the first steps to reach a conversation. The, the the thing as well is, beyond this common feeling for respect of life, respect of human dignity, which is inscribed, I think, in every human being, you can go even more practical, right? Is whom do I want to give? What do I want to contribute? What are the resources I have that I can put on the table? What are the resources we have in common, right? And this has been done in history many times. And once people start reflecting about or from a place where it's not a place of lack, it's not a place of fear, but from a place of abundance.
Mhm.
Abundance on both what we can give and what we can contribute. The logic is totally different. It's not anymore about taking territories, about protecting myself. It's about really starting thinking, what can we do? What can we contribute? What can we dream?
Yes.
And to quote the same saint who was saying, dream, 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 you will always be beyond, below reality, can what reality can be, no? And it's explored now in neuroscience. We have, as human beings, this capacity to tap in the quantum field, as Joe Dispenza would say, to basically create and give and transform this into a material reality. And that starts from asking yourself, what can I give? That starts from appreciating the other, as you say, no?
Mhm. Mhm.
Seeing what there is. And this can be encapsulated. And I have a question here. I'm curious. When
Mhm.
the level of hatred is very strong, um, do you think starting with redefining a common purpose, redefining what can we do together, wouldn't break the pattern of hatred? Hatred is reaction of fear, right? The brain finds certainty in saying what there is not, right?
Mhm.
This guy or this lady or this group of people is odious for X reasons, right? And absolute certainty. And one needs to break that certainty, right?
Mhm.
And you break certainty with a higher certainty.
Mhm.
Uh, and so do you think that having people reflecting from the start about what could be a common purpose if everything would be nice, wouldn't be also a way to lead people to appreciate each other and to see what the good there is in the other, giving the safe space to the other? Because when you start talking about common purpose, uh, you start saying that the precondition is this safe space,
Mhm.
and common purpose provides safe space. What's your opinion about this? I'm really curious.
Yeah, I think it's good. That's a possibility. So the common purpose for a couple, for example, is we both have the common purpose that we want to love each other. And the common purpose for two different nations is that we both have the desire for peace and to not have people in our country be killed. And so that, and it's, and especially because of the reasons I just mentioned, you kill a male, you're in essence killing many family members' hope, desires, and and dreams, and the ability of women to have men to choose from, and so on. And so those are the common purposes. You can start there, and then. But it's so important to then go through the other steps as well, which is because if without the feeling of being appreciated and without the other person seeing the virtues that instead of your vices, and without the person the other nation's leader completely hearing you, you are still harboring an enormous amount of distrust and in your mind. And once people see the best in each other, even though they still have a history of knowing about the distrust and so on, there is definitely a softening, and then there's a willingness to move to the next level. So once I have a couple hear each other, the next level is, well, what do we do about this? Once we have two nations hear each other and say, okay, I see that, that Putin isn't just all evil, or Zelensky isn't just all evil, or Netanyahu or the Palestinians, et cetera, are not just all evil, that now, what can we agree with? And so, what can we agree to from that? And so with couples and with nations, what I have couples do is to do an exercise that I call how to create win-win solutions to your stickiest problems. And they sit across from the couple sits across from each other, and they do a sentence completion exercise in which one person says, one possible solution is this, and the other person takes it down like a cheerleader. That is, they're no matter what the solution is that the other person is offering, they just take it down like, oh my God, that's a great solution, even if it's a stupid solution, because you're just giving the other person the energy to feel just that they can come up with anything creative and effective, and then they eventually go over both people's lists of best possible solutions, and they choose ones that they think that they could live with, and then ones that they think are, yeah, there's some grain of of possibility for here, all the way up to this is actually a good idea. And then they put their best solutions together, the ones that reach the 10 level for both of them, and they start working on, okay, this is something we can agree to. And instead of arguing with all the ones that they think are stupid ideas, they focus on the ones that where they have common ground, and or they can stretch toward common ground, whether they're in a partnership or not. And some of these are very difficult decisions. Like one person may say, I want children, and the other one may say, I don't want children. And those are pretty sort of dichotomous answers. Or are they? Do we want to have somebody to be adopted? Do we want to have maybe spend time being a surrogate parent to somebody that doesn't have a parent, but not actually adopt them? And so there's all sorts of creative decisions, even there's all sorts of creative possibilities, even in areas that the first feel like a zero-sum game. You either have children or you don't have children. Well, maybe it's not as clear as it appears at first. And so that method is a method of mutual exploration as to where are the possibilities of that one can have the greatest reality of negotiating a win-win situation.
Yeah, and then rebuilding a common meaning, right? Because when you take
Yes.
this extreme situation, want children, don't want children,
Mhm.
it's about digging into the intention, right? Once more the purpose, because why you want children, why you don't want children, right? And what does it mean to you, and then you can find common grounds on meaning and serving the meaning of the other, provided obviously it would be valid, and always searching for this good intention that there is at the end, and see how to serve it, and instead
You're
of creating significance by shouting at each other or hurting each other, you start creating significance by contributing to the other. At least this level of understanding, and you start connecting with each other at a
Mhm.
deep level, no? And maybe you can have fun discovering what are the deep reasons, what do you really want, right? And then
Mhm.
you understand that it's not about having or not having children, right? One wants to have children, maybe out of significance, giving his own image to the next generation,
Mhm.
or it's about having someone to connect with, right? And the other one doesn't want children out of fear of lack,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
because some trauma is not healed yet, right? And so it can, or simply to enjoy the beauty of life, and then you can restart building all of what is good, put it together, and find other solutions. And
This What you're saying is so important and so perceptive. And one of the things that in the Role Mate to Soulmate workshop, and oh, by the way, all the things that we're talking about are outlined in much greater depth in the book Role Mate to Soulmate,
fantastic book, by the way.
including the last portion of this, which is called From Civil War to Civil Dialogue. But one of the things that's so crucial in this process that you just mentioned is understanding, what are the traumas, whether it's two nations. Both nations have traumas in the past, whether they've been invaded by Nazis, whether they've been, whether they at one point in history had a huge empire that they feel they could serve and protect everybody in that empire. And so the empire might be part of power, but it also might be a power grab, but it also might be a desire to protect many people. And so, but the previous trauma if it isn't understood and articulated and felt. So, for example, my Liz, my wife, had when she got a divorce, she was left with very little money. And she thought that and she had two children to raise, and the father, the biological father, was not around, and was offering very little money to support her. So she went through a trauma of fearing that she would not be able to support the two children, and that left her with a type of PTSD about money. So that even when we had money to do things, she was fearful that she could be again without money. My father felt the same way. He was born in 1910. There was two world wars and a depression. To extract a dollar from my father brought fears to him that there would be the possibility of never having enough money, as many people in the Depression experienced. And so it's so important to realize those underlying traumas and acknowledge them, because those are the traumas that prevent us from being fully able to negotiate in a way that makes easy win-win solutions. And in nations, you have the job to do, let's say, the leader of the nation finally begins to build some trust and some feeling of that we can have win-win solutions with that other leader of a different nation. So he or she goes back to the political party that they've been dealing with, and they've usually been surrounding themselves by people that agree with the perspective that the other nation is terrible and that our nation is wonderful. Now they have to work with the other nation, their advisors, and their political support system to end up with the same type of empathy, the same type of hearing that they have just done with that alternative leader. And so the politics of this, has to be the process has to be extended to the political advisors as well as to oneself in order for it to be politically viable.
And this is exactly what we're doing with the foundation in Vatican is basically, as you have seen, bringing people together on an open dialogue mode, right? And everybody is free to contribute. And what we try to contribute is a good, relaxed, fun context where people can exchange, where people can know each other. And we have had people from the five continents, all religions, races. And you've seen small formats where people start knowing each other, and instead of being the arch enemy of yesterday, okay, they can start becoming the human friends that they have together. They start sharing good moments together, no? And therefore start building good moments. And it's exactly what we are building, and we hope you join us for next meeting that should be soon. Uh, and we are so grateful for this moment you took this morning for you, this evening for us in Rome. And we're going to spread your teachings, integrate them in our dialogues, because it's so important to learn to appreciate each other, see the good there is in the other, no? And I think the brain focused on that, right? It's good for you, it's good for the other, and therefore for all people around. And so we could not encourage our audience here, could not encourage more to read Warren's books, which are a wonder, and help to live with this beautiful smile he always has on the face, this wonderful voice inviting us to a better. So thank you, Warren, for all of what you give and all the time you give us. And you're welcome to Rome whenever you want. Our door is always open to you and Liz.
Oh, thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
I want to make it really clear too that there are very few people that I have met in my life that have such a clear intellectual understanding of things, and at the same time have the warmth, and then also combine that with an entrepreneurial spirit to make it actually happen in real life, as opposed to just talk about it to a classroom. And you really combine all those virtues, and I really just love being a part of your life.
Yeah, we saw recently the movie, I never seen it before, Love Actually. I like the idea. So,
Mhm.
no, thank you so much. And we need your help. We need your concepts, your contribution, everything that helps. As you just said, no, love better, love more in practice, love in action are things that are absolutely necessary to empower our humanity, and make it closer to God somehow.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Warren, and a big hug to Liz.
Thank you. Will do.
Bye bye.